Welcome to Danger, the channel where we dive into the world's most chilling true crime stories. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get notified every time we post something. On today's case, we're looking at the disturbing case of Lidia Rebelo and the death of his mother, 58-year-old Colleen Rebelo. What initially appeared to be an unexplained death inside a home in Perth, Western Australia, would eventually turn into a murder investigation involving life insurance policies worth approximately $1.15 million, financial problems, fraudulent documents and a son accused of killing his own mother for financial gain. Lidia was eventually convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. However, the case is not completely over because Lidia is appealing his conviction, with his appeal scheduled to be heard in September 2026. Before we get into what happened to Colleen, it is important to understand who Lidia Rebelo was and the lifestyle he appeared to be living at the time. Lidia was a cryptocurrency trader and was in a relationship with Australian model and social media influencer Gracie Piscopo. Together, they appeared to be living what many people would describe as a luxurious and successful lifestyle. Their relationship and their lives were visible on social media, where they shared photographs and updates with a large online audience. From the outside, Lidia and Gracie appeared to be doing extremely well. They traveled frequently and went on expensive-looking holidays, including trips to destinations such as the Maldives. They also attended and hosted extravagant celebrations, including celebrations for the young son. Their social media posts showed holidays, beautiful locations, expensive cars and a lifestyle that gave followers the impression that they were financially successful. In 2022, 9 News described the couple's online presence as a picture-perfect life that included holidays and extravagant parties. To people watching them online, there appeared to be little indication that Lidia was experiencing serious financial difficulties. Their social media presence presented the image of a young couple enjoying luxury, traveling and living comfortably. But prosecutors would later tell the court that behind that image, Lidia's financial circumstances were very different from what people were seeing online. According to evidence presented during the trial, Lidia was experiencing significant financial problems. Prosecutors argued that the lifestyle he had created was becoming difficult to maintain. By the time of the trial, evidence was presented that he and Gracie had more than $100,000 in debt. The prosecution argued that Lidia was desperate to maintain the lifestyle he had created and that his financial circumstances provided an important motive for what happened to his mother. It is important to make one thing clear when discussing Gracie Piscopo. She was Lidia's partner and the mother of their child, but there has been no suggestion that she was involved in Colleen's death. She was called as a defense witness during the murder trial, but she was not charged with murdering Colleen. The prosecution's case focused on Lidia and his alleged actions. Lidia's mother, Colleen Rebelo, was 58 years old when she died. She was a mother of 4 and lived in Bicton, a suburb of Perth. Colleen was also studying towards a master's degree in health administration at Murdoch University and was nearing the end of her studies. Her family knew her as a caring mother, and her death would come as a devastating shock to those close to her. The date that would change everything was the 25th of May 2020. On that morning, Colleen dropped her youngest son, Fabian, at work. Fabian was expecting his mother to collect him later that day, but Colleen never arrived. When Fabian became concerned, he eventually returned to the family home. When he entered the house, he heard the shower running. He went towards the bathroom and discovered his mother unresponsive. Emergency services were called, but Colleen was already dead. At first, investigators did not treat Colleen's death as suspicious. There was no obvious forced entry into the property, and there was initially no clear evidence that someone had deliberately harmed her. Her death was therefore initially treated as an unexplained death rather than a murder. Colleen was found in the shower with the water running. This detail would later become extremely important because the prosecution eventually argued that Lidia had killed his mother and attempted to make the circumstances appear more natural. However, one of the most complicated aspects of the case was that the exact medical cause of Colleen's death was never conclusively established. During the trial, Forensic evidence was examined extensively. The prosecution argued that Colleen had been deliberately suffocated or smothered. The defense, however, challenged this and argued that there was another possible explanation for her death, including the possibility of a sudden medical event. The uncertainty surrounding the precise cause of death became one of the central issues in the defense case and later became relevant to André's appeal. The investigation remained relatively quiet for some time. Then investigators began looking into Colleen's financial affairs and, more specifically, the life insurance policies connected to her. This is where the case took a dramatic turn. Investigators discovered that André had taken out 3 separate life insurance policies on his mother's life in the week before she died. The combined value of those policies was approximately $1.15 million, and André was named as the beneficiary. The timing immediately attracted attention. Colleen was 58 years old, apparently healthy enough to continue with her studies and plans, and had died unexpectedly only days after these insurance policies were arranged. For prosecutors, this was one of the most significant pieces of evidence in the case. They argued that André had deliberately arranged the policies because he intended to benefit financially from his mother's death. The insurance companies also became suspicious because of André's behavior after Colleen died. Rather than simply mourning his mother and leaving the insurance process to unfold, André began trying to make claims on the policies very soon after her death. One of the claims involved approximately $500,000. Investigators eventually became aware of the suspicious activity surrounding the claims, and this helped turn attention back towards the circumstances of Colleen's death. Reports indicate that her death was initially not considered suspicious, but the investigation changed after concerns arose about André's dealings with the life insurance policies. Investigators then discovered that André had allegedly gone even further by creating fraudulent documents to support his insurance claims. The fraud allegations involved documents relating to Colleen's death and estate. Evidence presented during the case included a forged death certificate or coronial document, a forged version of Colleen's will and other fraudulent material that prosecutors said was designed to help André obtain the insurance money. One particularly unusual piece of evidence involved a fake voicemail. In the recording, a woman was made to sound as though she was Colleen's psychologist. The message was presented as supporting the insurance claim. Prosecutors argued that the recording was part of an attempt to create the impression that Colleen had been receiving psychological counseling and that the insurance claim was legitimate. André eventually admitted to a number of fraud offenses connected to the insurance matter. However, admitting to fraud was not the same as admitting to murder. Throughout the murder proceedings, André continued to deny that he had killed his mother. The prosecution's theory was that the fraud was part of a much larger plan. They argued that André had first arranged the life insurance policies, then killed Colleen, and afterwards attempted to obtain the insurance money by creating false documents and providing misleading information. Police also began looking closely at André's financial circumstances. Prosecutors argued that his cryptocurrency trading had not produced the financial security that his social media lifestyle suggested. Instead, they said he was under serious financial pressure and struggling to maintain the image of success that he had created. This contrast became one of the most striking parts of the prosecution's case. Online, André appeared to be a young man enjoying luxury holidays, expensive possessions and a glamorous lifestyle with his influencer girlfriend. Behind that image, prosecutors argued, he was struggling with substantial debt and was under pressure to keep the lifestyle going. The sentencing judge later said the offending had been designed to help André maintain that lifestyle. Investigators also examined André's movements on the day Colleen died. Mobile phone evidence became an important part of the prosecution's case. The prosecution argued that André's phone was in the vicinity of his mother's home during a critical period on the morning of the 25th of May 2020. According to evidence presented during the trial, the relevant period was approximately between 10:33 a.m. and 11:40 a.m. The Crown argued that this gave André an opportunity to be alone with his mother. Fabian had already left the home for work, and prosecutors argued that there was a window of time in which André could have entered the house, killed Colleen and then left before Fabian returned. However, There was no eyewitness who saw Andrei kill his mother. There was also no definitive forensic finding that established exactly how Colleen died. This meant that the prosecution's case was largely circumstantial. The Crown therefore had to convince the jury that the individual pieces of evidence, when considered together, proved beyond reasonable doubt that Andrei was responsible for his mother's death. Andrei's defense challenged that interpretation of the evidence. His lawyers argued that the prosecution had not established exactly how Colleen died and that there were alternative explanations that could not simply be dismissed. The defense also questioned the timeline of events and the significance of Andrei's phone being near the property. Andrei admitted that he had visited his mother on the day she died, but he explained that he had not initially told his siblings or police about the visit because he was in shock and, according to his evidence, no one had asked him about it. The prosecution viewed his failure to disclose the visit differently and used it to challenge his credibility. Another important issue involved Colleen's health. The defense suggested that she could have suffered a sudden medical event, including a cardiac event, that might explain her unexpected death. The prosecution, however, argued that the circumstances surrounding Colleen's death, combined with the insurance policies and Andrei's subsequent conduct, pointed towards murder rather than a natural death. The murder trial eventually began in the Supreme Court of Western Australia. It lasted almost 2 months and involved evidence from numerous witnesses. The prosecution presented the jury with what it said was a chain of evidence. They pointed to the 3 insurance policies taken out shortly before Colleen died. They pointed to Andrei's financial difficulties and the luxurious lifestyle he appeared to be maintaining. They pointed to his attempts to claim the insurance money almost immediately after his mother's death. They pointed to the fraudulent documents and the mobile phone evidence. Finally, they pointed to the circumstances in which Colleen had been found. The Crown argued that these facts were not separate coincidences. Instead, they formed a pattern showing that Andrei had a financial motive, the opportunity to kill his mother and a subsequent attempt to profit from her death. Andrei's defense continued to deny that he had murdered Colleen. His lawyers argued that the evidence did not eliminate reasonable doubt and that the exact cause of Colleen's death remained uncertain. Andrei also took the witness stand during the trial. His evidence was closely examined by the prosecution, particularly his movements on the morning of his mother's death and his failure to initially disclose his visit to the property. Meanwhile, Gracie Piscopo also became part of the trial because she was called as a defense witness. Evidence was heard about her relationship with Andrei and communications between them around the time of Colleen's death. However, it is important to repeat that Gracie was not accused of murdering Colleen. After hearing approximately 8 weeks of evidence, the jury reached its verdict. On the 5th of December 2024, Lidia Rebelo was found guilty of murdering his mother, Colleen Rebelo. The verdict meant that the jury had accepted the prosecution's circumstantial case and rejected the defense's explanation that Colleen could have died from a natural or medical cause. Andrei showed little visible reaction when the guilty verdict was delivered. His father, Antonio Rebelo, continued to support him, while some of Andrei's siblings were not present in court for the verdict. Several months later, Andrei returned to court for sentencing. On the 1st of April 2025, Supreme Court Justice Bruno Fiannaca sentenced Andrei to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. The judge described the crime as an extraordinary betrayal of his mother. The court heard that Andrei had been in more than $100,000 of debt with his influencer girlfriend and that the crime was connected to his desire to maintain the lifestyle he had created. The judge also considered the effect of the crime on Andrei's young son. His son would grow up knowing that his father was in prison and without his grandmother. Andrei therefore received a life sentence and must serve a minimum of 25 years before becoming eligible for parole consideration, subject to Australian law and any subsequent court decisions. But even after his conviction and sentencing, Andrei did not give up his legal fight. His lawyers appealed the conviction, arguing that there were significant issues with the evidence presented at trial. One of the important issues in the appeal concerns the shower and the home's hot water system. During the trial, evidence was given about the property's older storage hot water system. The defense has argued that the system could only provide a limited amount of continuous hot water. This became relevant because Colleen was discovered in the shower later in the day. The defense argues that the hot water evidence could have implications for the timeline established by prosecutors. If the shower had been turned on later than the prosecution suggested, it could potentially affect the Crown's reconstruction of what happened inside the home. The appeal has also involved questions about Colleen's health and whether an underlying medical condition could potentially have contributed to her death. Andre's lawyers have investigated a possible genetic explanation for a sudden cardiac event. This remains a defense theory and should not be presented as an established fact. The original jury convicted Andre after hearing the evidence available at trial, and his conviction remains in force unless an appeal court changes the outcome. As of August 2026, Lidia Rebelo remains convicted of murdering his mother and remains subject to his life sentence. However, his appeal is still pending. The Western Australian Court of Appeal has scheduled Andre's appeal to begin on the 16th of September 2026. The hearing is expected to last approximately a day and a half. So, as we look at this case today, it is important to remember that there are two stages to the story. The first is what the prosecution successfully presented at trial and what convinced the jury beyond reasonable doubt that Andre murdered his mother for financial gain. The second is the appeal, where his legal team is challenging aspects of that case and arguing that important questions remain about the timeline and the circumstances surrounding Colleen's death. The Lidia Rebelo case is particularly disturbing because of the contrast between the life that appeared on social media and the financial reality prosecutors described in court. To followers, Andre and Gracie appeared to be enjoying a glamorous life filled with holidays, luxury and celebrations. Their online presence suggested that they were successful and financially comfortable. Yet prosecutors later argued that Andre was struggling with substantial debt and was desperate to maintain that lifestyle. Then came the life insurance policies. 3 policies, approximately $1.15 million, taken out on his mother only days before her death. Then Colleen died unexpectedly. Andre tried to claim the insurance money. Fraudulent documents were uncovered. And eventually, investigators came to believe that what had initially looked like an unexplained death was actually a carefully planned financial crime that ended in murder. The jury ultimately agreed with the prosecution and convicted Andre of murder. But the question is not completely finished because Andre's appeal remains before the courts. The next major chapter is scheduled for the 16th of September 2026, when the Western Australian Court of Appeal is expected to hear his challenge to the conviction. Until that appeal is decided, Lidia Rebelo remains legally convicted of murdering his mother, Colleen Rebelo. And that is what makes this case so compelling. It is not simply a story about a mother who died unexpectedly. It is a story about a seemingly perfect lifestyle, hidden financial pressure, life insurance, fraud, a mysterious death, a murder conviction and an appeal that could potentially change the course of the case. Thank you for watching. If you want more factual and respectful true crime content, please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, stay safe.